The clink of a spoon against a glass cut through the room just as people were reaching for dessert. My stepdaughter Ashley stood up at the end of the dining table, one hand resting on her stomach, smiling like she was about to share the happiest news of her life. The soft smell of vanilla candles hung in the air, and everyone leaned forward, waiting. "I'm so excited to become a mom," she said. People smiled. Her grandmother wiped her eyes. Then Ashley looked straight at me. "And the best part is, my baby will finally have a real mother." For a second. No one moved. Every face in that room slowly turned toward me. The first thing I noticed after Ashley said that was the sound of someone sliding a chair back across the hardwood floor. It wasn't loud, but in that sudden silence it felt sharp, like a scratch across glass. Nobody laughed. Nobody said anything. My fork was still in my hand, halfway between the plate and my mouth, and I remember staring at the small piece of apple pie on it like I had forgotten what people were supposed to do next. You know that strange moment when a room turns into a stage and you realize you're the one standing under the spotlight? That was exactly how it felt. Ashley didn't look nervous. She looked relieved. She gave a little shrug, like she had just said something obvious, something everyone should already understand. A couple of relatives shifted in their seats. My mother-in-law, Carol, looked confused more than anything, her napkin still pressed against her lips. I stood up slowly and said something about needing some air. I'm not even sure anyone heard me. By the time I reached the hallway, the smell of the candles from the dining room had faded, and all I could hear was the low hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Standing there, I kept thinking about how strange it was that 14 years could suddenly feel so small. I met Ashley when she was 4 years old. Daniel and I had only been dating a few months when he introduced us, and I remember kneeling down in his living room while she hid behind the couch, peeking at me like I was some kind of suspicious neighbor. Her biological mom had passed away the year before, a heart condition nobody had caught in time. Daniel never hid that part of their life from me, and I respected that from the beginning. The house still had photos of her on the walls. There were framed pictures in the hallway, one on the piano, another on Ashley's nightstand. I never tried to replace her. Instead, we did things together to keep her memory alive. We made a small memory box with letters and photographs. Every year on her birthday, Daniel would take Ashley to visit the cemetery, and sometimes I'd go too, standing a little off to the side while Ashley told stories about school. Over time, the awkwardness faded. Ashley started asking me for help with homework. I learned how she liked her grilled cheese extra crispy on the edges. I sat through elementary school concerts where the folding chairs were too small and the gym lights buzzed overhead. I drove her to soccer practice, waited in parking lots during dance classes, and spent more evenings than I can count standing in line at the grocery store buying poster boards for school projects she remembered at the last minute. Daniel and I eventually got married when Ashley was 6. We never had biological children together. We tried for a while, went through doctor appointments and quiet conversations late at night, but the truth settled in slowly. It probably wasn't going to happen. Somewhere along the way, we stopped talking about it. Ashley became our only child, and for years, I believed we had built something real together. Not perfect teenagers don't make life easy, but real. By the time she graduated high school last summer, our house was the kind of place where her friends showed up without knocking. You'd hear the front door open, backpacks dropping on the floor, laughter drifting down the hallway. That was also around the time Tyler started coming over. He was Ashley's boyfriend during her senior year. 19, quiet, polite enough when he spoke, though Daniel always said the kid seemed a little lost about what he wanted to do with his life. Still, we tried to stay supportive. So when Ashley sat us down 2 months ago and told us she was 10 weeks pregnant, I remember Daniel letting out a long breath and rubbing his forehead like he was doing complicated math in his head. The house was quiet that evening. Even the dishwasher had already finished running. Ashley held the ultrasound photo in both hands, and somehow, despite the shock, the only thing I could think about in that moment was that we were about to become grandparents. The dining room slowly came back to life after I left the table that night, though I didn't see most of it myself. Later, Daniel told me pieces of what happened while I was standing in the hallway trying to breathe like a normal person again. Apparently, Ashley just sat down and picked up her fork like nothing unusual had happened. Someone asked her another question about the baby. Tyler tried to laugh it off. Plates moved, chairs shifted. Conversations restarted in that awkward way people do when everyone knows something uncomfortable just happened, but nobody wants to be the one to name it. Daniel followed me about a minute later. I was leaning against the kitchen counter when he came in, the cool granite pressing into my palms. The overhead light above the sink buzzed faintly, the kind of sound you don't notice until everything else goes quiet. "What was that?" he asked. Not angry at me, confused, hurt. I shook my head because I honestly didn't have an answer. "I thought we were past that," I said. And for a while that night, Daniel thought the same thing. He went back to the dining room, asked everyone to finish up dinner, and quietly ended the gathering earlier than planned. I could hear the low murmur of voices, coats being picked up from the hallway hooks, the front door opening and closing as relatives slipped out into the cold evening. Ashley never came to talk to me that night. The next morning was stranger. You'd think after something like that there would be tension in the house. Right doors slamming, someone crying, a conversation that needed to happen. Instead, Ashley walked into the kitchen around 9 in the morning wearing one of Daniel's old college hoodies, poured herself a bowl of cereal, and asked if I could drive her to her doctor's appointment later that week. Just like that, like the night before, hadn't existed. I remember standing by the sink rinsing a coffee mug, the smell of dish soap hanging in the air, and wondering if I had somehow imagined the entire thing. "I can't," I told her. It wasn't true. I didn't have anything planned that day. I just couldn't picture sitting in a car with her for 40 minutes pretending everything was normal. Ashley shrugged again. The same small gesture she'd used at dinner. "Okay," she said. "I'll ask Tyler." That was it. No apology, no awkward explanation. Not even the kind of half-hearted "I didn't mean it like that" people usually say when they realize they crossed a line. Daniel spoke to her later that afternoon while I was upstairs folding laundry. I didn't hear the whole conversation, only pieces drifting up the stairwell. His voice was calm at first, then firmer, then quiet again. When he came upstairs, he sat on the edge of the bed and rubbed his face with both hands the way he does when something doesn't make sense to him. "She says she was just being honest. He told me." I sat down beside him. "About what?" "About how she feels." According to Ashley, she hadn't meant to embarrass anyone. She said she appreciated everything I had done for her growing up, but that didn't change the fact that I wasn't her real mother. Daniel told her that wasn't the point. The point was that she had said it like that, in front of everyone. Ashley apparently thought we were overreacting. "She said you're taking it too personally," Daniel said quietly. I felt something inside me shift when he said that. Not anger exactly. It was more like a door closing somewhere deep in my chest. For years I had told myself that step-parenting comes with complicated emotions, that kids say things they don't mean, that grief doesn't move in straight lines. But sitting there on the edge of the bed, listening to Daniel repeat her words, a different thought began to settle in. Maybe Ashley hadn't said something cruel in the heat of the moment. Maybe she had simply said what she had always believed. And if that was true, then the life I thought we had built together suddenly looked very different. The conversation with Ashley happened that evening in the living room. Not dramatic, no yelling, no slammed doors. The house was almost too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes every small sound stand out. I remember the faint ticking of the wall clock above the television and the rustle of the throw blanket Ashley kept folding and unfolding in her lap. Daniel sat in the armchair across from her. I stayed on the couch. For a moment, nobody spoke. Ashley looked from him to me, like she was waiting for one of us to start the conversation. Her phone was face down on the coffee table, the screen lighting up every few minutes with notifications she ignored. Finally, Daniel cleared his throat. "What you said last night hurt her," he said, nodding slightly in my direction. Ashley didn't argue with that, but she didn't apologize either. "I said how I feel," she replied after a pause. "I didn't mean it to be this big thing." There it was again, that calm certainty, like the rest of us were the ones misunderstanding something obvious. Daniel leaned forward a little. Ashley, there's a difference between having feelings and humiliating someone in front of your entire family. She looked down at the blanket in her hands. I thanked her, she said quietly. I literally said I appreciate everything she's done. I felt a strange pressure behind my ribs when she said that, like my body was trying to decide whether to laugh or cry. You thanked me, I said slowly, for trying. Ashley didn't respond, and in that silence, something in me settled. For 14 years, I had told myself that love was enough, that showing up, being patient, staying steady through all the messy parts of growing up would eventually make things clear. But sitting there in that quiet living room, watching Ashley avoid my eyes, I realized something I should have understood sooner. Love doesn't obligate someone to see you the way you hope they will. And once that became clear, the rest of the conversation suddenly felt different. I took a slow breath. Ashley, I said, since you feel that I'm not really your mother, I think it makes sense that I stop acting like I am. Her head lifted slightly. What does that mean? It means I won't be paying for the delivery costs anymore, or the baby expenses we talked about. Ashley blinked. But you said I did, I said gently, because I thought we had a different relationship. Daniel didn't interrupt. He just sat there, hands clasped, watching Ashley carefully. I continued. You're 18. You're an adult, and adults make their own households. Ashley's voice sharpened a little. Are you kicking me out? No, Daniel said immediately. We're not doing that tonight. I nodded. You have time, I said. 30 days to figure out where you want to live. That's reasonable. Ashley looked between us again, this time with something closer to disbelief. You're doing this because I said one sentence no, I said quietly. I'm doing this because that sentence told me how you really see me. The room went still again. Ashley pushed herself up from the couch. This is ridiculous, she said, grabbing her phone from the table. You're punishing me for having feelings. Daniel stood as well. No, he said calmly. We're asking you to take responsibility for your life. Ashley shook her head and walked toward the hallway, her footsteps heavy against the wood floor. A few seconds later, her bedroom door shut. The house fell silent again. Daniel exhaled slowly. You okay? He asked. I nodded, though the truth was more complicated than that. Because for the first time since the dinner announcement, the confusion had lifted. The pain was still there, but now it had edges, and once something has edges, you can finally see where the boundaries belong. For the next couple of weeks, the house felt unfamiliar in a quiet, unsettling way. Ashley packed slowly, not in a dramatic rush, not slamming drawers or throwing things into boxes. It was more like watching someone gradually erase their presence from a place they had lived for years. A hoodie disappeared from the back of a kitchen chair. Her sneakers were gone from beside the front door. One afternoon, I noticed the corkboard in her room had been cleared of photos and concert tickets. Small absences that kept reminding me something was changing. Tyler picked her up most evenings after work. His car, a dented gray Honda, would pull into the driveway around 6. The low rumble of the engine would sit there for a minute before the door opened, and Ashley walked out carrying another bag. Neither of them said much to me. Not cold. Exactly. Just distant. The only real noise in the house came from Ashley's phone. Every few days, Daniel or I would hear the faint ping of notifications as she posted something online. Tyler's mom eventually mentioned it to Daniel during a phone call. Ashley had been telling people that I'd kicked her out while she was pregnant. The first time Daniel repeated that to me. I was standing at the kitchen counter slicing tomatoes for dinner. The knife paused halfway through one, juice pooling on the cutting board. Did she say that exactly? I asked. He nodded. I didn't answer right away. I just finished cutting the tomato, wiped the blade on a towel, and set it down. For a moment, I wondered if maybe this was how things ended. Quietly, with people believing a version of the story that didn't quite match what actually happened. But a few days later, something shifted. Tyler showed up at the house alone one evening, Daniel had just stepped outside to bring the trash bins back from the curb when Tyler knocked on the door. When I opened it, the cold air followed him into the hallway along with the faint smell of gasoline from the driveway. "Is Ashley here?" I asked automatically. He shook his head. "Can I talk to you and Daniel for a minute?" We ended up sitting around the kitchen table again, the same place where Ashley had first told us about the pregnancy. Tyler kept turning his phone over in his hands like it was heavier than it should have been. "I didn't know if I should bring this up," he said, "but things have been weird lately." Daniel pulled out a chair. "What kind of weird?" Tyler hesitated, then unlocked his phone. "You know her Aunt Heather?" he asked. I exchanged a glance with Daniel. "She moved back to town about a year ago," Daniel said slowly. "Ashley's been seeing her sometimes." Tyler nodded. "Yeah, a lot. Actually," he slid the phone across the table toward us, "I think she's been kind of influencing Ashley." Daniel picked up the phone first. At first, it just looked like a regular text thread, gray and blue message bubbles stacked on top of each other. But as he scrolled, his expression changed. "Where did you get this?" he asked quietly. Tyler rubbed the back of his neck. "Ashley sent some of these to me a while back," he said. "She thought it was funny at the time." I leaned over Daniel's shoulder. One message from Heather read, "If you want people to understand what you've been through, you have to say it out loud." Another said, "Tell them your baby deserves a real mother. That'll make the point clear." My eyes stopped on that line. It was almost word for word what Ashley had said at the dinner table. The room went very still. Daniel set the phone down carefully, so she told Ashley what to say, he murmured. Tyler nodded again. "And she's been promising her things too," he added, "like helping them get an apartment, paying for college later. Stuff like that." For a moment, nobody spoke. Outside, a car passed on the street, tires hissing softly against the pavement. Daniel finally looked up. "We need to talk to Ashley about this," he said. Tyler hesitated. "She's meeting Heather tonight," he said, "at that diner on Maple Street." Daniel pushed his chair back and stood. "Then that's where we're going." The diner on Maple Street was one of those places that looked exactly the same no matter what year you walked into it. Same red vinyl booths, same coffee machine hissing behind the counter, same faint smell of frying oil that clung to the air no matter how many times they wiped down the grills. By the time Daniel and I pushed open the glass door, Ashley and Heather were already sitting in a booth near the window. Ashley noticed us first. Her shoulders stiffened immediately. "What are you doing here?" she asked as we approached the table. Heather leaned back against the seat, arms crossed, watching us like she had expected this moment all along. Daniel didn't sit down. "Tyler showed us the messages," he said. For a moment, Heather's expression didn't change. Then she laughed softly. "Oh, please," she said. "You're really going to believe a bunch of text messages from a teenager." Ashley looked from Heather to Daniel, confusion flickering across her face. "What messages?" she asked. Daniel slid Tyler's phone across the table. Ashley picked it up. I watched her eyes move across the screen, line by line. The color drained slowly from her face as the conversation unfolded in front of her. The coaching, the suggestions, the exact words she had repeated at dinner. When Ashley finally looked up, her eyes were wet. "Heather?" she said quietly. Heather straightened in her seat. "I was helping you," she replied. "Someone needed to remind you where you come from." "You told me what to say," Ashley whispered. "You said you wanted them to understand," Heather shot back. "And frankly, that woman has been playing house with your mother's life for years." That was the moment Ashley pushed the phone away. "Stop," she said. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the conversation instantly. For the first time since we had walked in, Ashley looked directly at me. "I didn't realize how much of that I was repeating," she said slowly. "I thought I was just figuring things out." Daniel finally sat down. "No one ever asked you to choose between your mom's memory and Amanda," he said. Ashley wiped her face with the sleeve of her hoodie. "I know that now," she said. Heather scoffed and stood up. "This is ridiculous," she muttered, grabbing her purse. "When that baby's born, you'll remember who your real family is." No one stopped her when she walked out. The bell above the diner door rang once. Then the room went quiet again, except for the low hum of the refrigerator behind the counter. Ashley stared at the table for a long time. Then she turned toward me. "I'm sorry," she said. The words sounded small, but they were real. I didn't rush to answer. Trust doesn't come back the moment someone says the right sentence. But as we sat there in that booth, listening to the clatter of dishes in the kitchen, I realized something had finally shifted. For the first time since the dinner announcement, Ashley wasn't defending what happened. She was trying to understand it. The house sounded different again after Ashley moved back. Not louder, just fuller. Daniel spent a Saturday afternoon helping Tyler turn the basement into something that actually looked like a small apartment. They moved the old couch downstairs, set up a second-hand desk near the window, and dragged a little refrigerator down the steps while arguing about whether it would fit through the doorway. The whole time, Ashley followed them around slowly, carrying lighter boxes, wiping down shelves, trying in small ways to be useful. One evening, a few days later, she knocked on the kitchen door frame while I was rinsing vegetables for dinner. "Do you want to come with me to the ultrasound tomorrow?" she asked. I didn't answer right away. I just dried my hands on a towel and leaned against the counter for a second. "Yeah," I said finally. "I'd like that. Trust doesn't rebuild all at once. It grows back in small moments, quiet ones you almost miss if you aren't paying attention. And if there's one thing this whole mess taught me, it's this: being family isn't something you prove with blood. It's something you prove with time." If you've ever had someone question your place in their life, I'm curious, what would you have done in my position? And if stories about real families, messy choices, and second chances mean something to you, hit subscribe. Because sometimes the quiet stories are the ones that stay with you the longest.